fact is more than 6 months until Election Day, and Donald Trump is dangerously already refusing to commit to accepting the results of the 2024 election. While pushing the big lie in an interview with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Trump said this about the 2024 race, quote, "If everything's honest, I'd gladly accept the results. If it's not, you have to fight for the right of the country." That terrifying warning comes just after Trump, speaking with Time magazine, hinted that another January 6th could happen if he loses this election. Joining us now is Democratic strategist and former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party, Basil Smikle. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to have you, man.
Good to be here.
So, quick question out of the gate. When do people not realize that Donald Trump means what he says? I mean, is it just a small group of us who are sitting here listening to this man repeatedly say the same thing over and over and over again, doesn't sway off of it? His base is there. They're all down for it. What is it in the media and what is it in politics that people cannot begin to take what this man is saying seriously and prepare and gird ourselves against what will be a very difficult election?
Well, you and I are probably raised in a way where where somebody told you, if somebody said something to you, you believe them, right? Right. That's how I was raised, and I think most of us were raised that way. What was the attraction for Donald Trump, or to Donald Trump in 2016, was that he was going to be this big disruptor, right? But now he's shifted into dictator. And I think the challenge for so many of us as we go out and sort of talk to voters about what's at stake here is to say, look, this is no longer disruptive politics. He has told you time and time again what he will do. What I think is that a lot of voters just see that as a sign of strength because they respond to strength. Some of it is a little misogyny in there, to be clear, and a toxic masculinity that's in there as well. But a lot of voters respond to this kind of strength. But what they don't understand is that he is intent upon taking the thousands of people who he can appoint in government, put his followers, and I say that word very carefully, followers into these positions so that they can do his bidding. The guardrails are going to be off. But I don't think enough people really understand the importance of those positions. They want to vote for the person. And I have to go back and say, it's not just the person, it's everyone that he's going to appoint that will head institutions, that will move the bureaucracy in a way that he sees fit, not for the good of the people.
So Basil, we've heard a lot about how Donald Trump is really appealing to black male voters. And part of that is, he's tried to sort of insist that his criminal problems right now are sort of similar to the issues that black America faces. How does this play with black Americans? Like, the idea of marshaling the government against a group of people who are your enemies should not play well with black people.
Yeah, but here it shouldn't. But there's this interesting tactic that he's used. Donald Trump's always been a person that loves celebrity. So he goes to the celebrities first and gives them an opportunity to then talk to everybody else. So when I said, with all due respect to the gentleman, when I see Brother Stephen A. Smith out here talking about, well, what Donald Trump's going through is something that, African Americans are going through. Absolutely not. Because Donald Trump was the one that was saying that these 5 young men in New York in the late 80s should be put on death row.
The exonerated 5.
The exonerated 5, right? It is nowhere near the same thing. But what he does is he gets a certain group of folks in the community to then be his mouthpiece. And what I don't think they realize is that they are being his mouthpiece. So that starts to filter down a little bit. But it then becomes incumbent upon us to be able to counteract that. I was at Morehouse at the beginning of April, and when I talk to those students, they get the assignment. Now, they have some concerns about Joe Biden coming and speaking, and we get that. But they understand the assignment. Their need is to go out and speak to this social justice agenda. And I think we have to continue to beat that drum.
Here's the thing. Anyone who's done GOTV, anyone who's done civic engagement knows that there is a challenge in talking about election integrity, which is you can freak voters out. You can demotivate voters by making them think that their vote doesn't matter because there is already something wrong in the system. It was interesting to me that in the wake of Donald Trump's comments, you had the Wisconsin Republican Party wanting to come in. I want to ask you about this as a national chair. I want to ask you about this as a state chair. This is what the Wisconsin Republican Party, how they responded to that Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel piece. They said, the Republican Party of Wisconsin has taken unprecedented steps to ensure the 2024 election will be the most secure before in our state's history. We are confident that the will of Wisconsin voters will be made clear on Election Day and look forward to winning their trust and support during this campaign. This comes from the Wisconsin GOP chair, Brian Schimming, because they know those statements are a problem for the very voters. They need to turn out more to win.
They are. They always are. And this, can we just put on the table for the record that our elections in this country, and I just had this conversations in my travels last week about American elections, that everybody think, oh, it's so corrupt. BS on that. It is not corrupt. Our elections are some of the most secure in the world. The men and women who are at the grassroots level, who are out there churning the efforts to make sure that that happens, are good men and women. And the concern that a lot of state parties have and a lot of election officials have is whether or not, because of this toxic environment that Trump has created around voting, right, that people won't show up to volunteer as they once did because they don't want to live under threat from a neighbor who's gone half crazy over Trump.
And it's a lot of women,
crap.
too.
And it's a
women
lot of
are
women.
predominantly poll workers, and they're afraid.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's one of the most compelling arguments I make to folks that are interested in the process but don't follow it day to day is that as a state party leader, I know when you don't vote. We know this. We can go back 15, 20 years to find your voting record. We know if you don't vote. So if there's a campaign with limited resources, limited time, what are they going to do? Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter. They're going to pick and choose where they're going to get their votes from based on whether or not people actually go out and cast their ballot. So when you tell me that your vote doesn't count, I say, well, it does count because we know when you don't. And if you decide not to vote over periods of time, and groups of people make that same decision. If I'm a campaign, again, limited resources, limited time, what do? I don't go to you. And if that happens year after year after year, then you have communities, whether it's based on race, ethnicity or geography, communities that are not getting substantial representation because they don't cast that ballot. And a lot of folks want to say, well, yeah, I'm not going to do it in protest. Like, yeah, you can protest your way out of being represented well.
Here's the problem. You have Donald Trump saying, I'll accept the results if they're honest. Well, the process is an honest process. The results will be honest. So the idea that you think of all the elections that we've had in the history of this country, that your election is the least honest and the most corrupt, it just shows the fallacy of what the man is laying out there. Donald Trump is afraid of losing because it strikes at the core of the thing that's most important to him, and that's his ego. And he doesn't want to do the work to actually win. He wants to goad and cajole and bully people into believing something about our system because he's too weak of a man to actually go out and campaign like any other normal candidate would go out and campaign. So that's your truth, Donald Trump. And now what you're trying to do is game the system as he did in 16 and 20 to say that, well, if I don't win, then the system is corrupt. No, Donald Trump, if you don't win, it's because more people voted against you than for you, and our electoral system confirmed that.
Well, I think it's actually even bigger than just winning this election. If you stoke the view that there's rampant voter fraud, then not only do you have an explanation for why you didn't win, you also have an impetus for states to enact more draconian laws that make it harder for certain communities to vote. So, I mean, it is a two-pronged strategy to not only explain whatever might be the results of this election, but also to lay the foundation for making future elections less democratic.
And add a third leg to that as well, because if you also have a judiciary that's going to side with states that, mind you, and, you know, during Obama's term, I say this all the time, 1,000 Democrats in state legislatures across the country lost their seats. So if you see that all this policy is being pushed to the states, and you have a judiciary in place so that if anything goes to court, they can start venue shopping, right? Finding the path of least resistance, and therefore you get all of these policies that are enacted. That's why I say this is a grand scheme. And I think if we don't focus on that aspect of it, instead of just voting for the man, vote for the agenda, and all the people that are sort of part of that agenda, then this is we escape this issue of diminishing democracy.